Well, I'm doing this just before PMQs is set to kick off in about 2 or 3 hours' time. And already we are hearing the news that many MPs are preparing letters of no confidence to send to the 1922 committee. And it does look that this evening's broadcast of maybe very well be covering Boris Johnson's reaction to this. So please do come join us tonight at 7 o'clock GMT. Because it looks like today could get very fun very quickly. But there is a school of thought, there is a very small school of thought that Johnson may somehow manage to survive. And I've said this before, Johnson has survived incidents that have killed far, far, far more competent politicians than him. So the idea that we've had Operation Red Meat, of giving out things that are, shall we say, going to remind his MPs of why he was there, and the promises of obviously the 2019 general election that he made, and again, some of them got elected on, particularly the Red Wall MPs, apparently the ones who are being lobbied the most at this point, apparently, from what we've been hearing. So could a actual offensive of policies and reminding people, or in particular his MPs, of why he was put there in the first place, might it work? Could it work? Well, who knows? But one of the things that could certainly, shall we say, sway many of the Red Wall Tory MPs would almost certainly be a proper, genuine effort at levelling up. But of course, we know that's not going to happen. But let's have a look at this piece from the Yorkshire Bylines that talks about properly levelling up, shall we say, the north of England, and really getting it to work. Because there's one thing that David Cameron and George Osborne had right, that if they can get the north of England to work, it could provide a whole host of benefits for the rest of the country. So let's go diving on into this and find out more about levelling up, or how should we say, shall we say, might be very well just be destined to be yet more of an empty slogan. So as always, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with this. This comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of Forward Thinking Beats Bitter Nostalgia for Levelling Up. One of the most shameful lies that the Conservatives have been routinely spreading is the idea that they are busy levelling up the UK. I challenge anyone who believes that it is genuine and at the centre of this government policy to simply take a walk through places in Yorkshire that were once proud and are now dreadfully neglected, such as the centre of Barnsley or even the inner city of Bradford. These are not places that are experiencing a wondrous regeneration. They are places of a shadow of the former selves, with very little sign of progress and plenty of evidence of long decline. Those who live in the working class communities 50 years ago may have experienced hard lives, but they are also lived ones that have resilience. They are sometimes certainties that we may now look back on with nostalgia and believe the better ways of living than had been available for future generations. To live in an economy that was dominated by factories providing relatively stable jobs was to experience a more predictable lives than were more collective and sometimes supportive than is now the norm. Spend a week in the community of workers who shared the experiences and expectations and earned sufficient money to go out the weekend and to enjoy a dance or even a football match is a very different thing to work in isolation on a 0 hours contract delivering parcels. To have the protection of reliable work, sickness and holiday pay, a functioning health system and decent council housing was a very different lifestyle to the vulnerable insecurities and inconsistencies of much of modern life. It was a conviction that something indeed had been lost and needed to be regained that lay at the heart of the Brexit vote and even Trump's rise to power. During the EU referendum campaign, I heard many older people tell me that they were voting leave because they wanted things to go back to the way they used to be. They believed they had experienced the very real decline and that they wanted it to stop. In the States, this feeling was even more extreme in some of the Rust Belt cities of America. Detroit, for example, had seen its population drop from over 1 million to just 680,000. With more than 1 million people leaving the city, whole areas of the city now consisted of abandoned buildings, streets, and coyotes who had replaced people. The moment when a nation ceases to be secure in its economic power and begins to experience competition from around the world is indeed a dangerous one. It is easy to convince people that they have been failed by liberal governments, that they have been seeing jobs disappear to China and are fearful for the future. It is easy to promise and restore pride to get the nation back on the right track by making America great again, or getting Brexit done, or even taking back control. What is a lot actually harder is to deliver, especially when those who uttered the very tempting slogans only did so because they saw the marketing opportunity of pushing false hope, but in reality, they actually always intended to deliver more of the harsh realities of low tax, low regulation, and small state free market capitalism that had destroyed the old certainties in the first place. Now that a property billionaire and a spoiled product of the establishment have both failed to deliver any meaningful improvement of the living conditions of the people in these deprived communities, reasonable people now might expect the residents of those areas to feel betrayed and to never trust the extreme right-wing demagogue again. Unfortunately, logic and emotion are different things. The problem with convincing people that they can make America great again, or that they can restore Britain's standing by getting Brexit done, is that they now take a lot of unconvincing. Some are now recognizing that narrow-minded nationalism has utterly failed their nation. Some are returning to their delusioned, pessimistic mistrust of all politicians. And dangerously worrying is the number simply doubled down on their newfound faith, with all the enthusiasm of cult members. The existence of the very aggressive far-right extreme of the significant size is therefore going to have to be taken for granted as a fact of life for at least the coming years. That means how we handle them also now matters. You cannot defeat an extremist nationalist by accepting their premise and accepting them to become reasonable. The only way is to offer a better alternative. It is important to focus on the positive opportunities and to articulate the real ways that well-being of a nation can be achieved in a changing world. Whether anyone likes it or not, the world is indeed changing fast, and it's going to be necessary to move to a sustainable economy and a sustainable society, instead of indulging in the soft nationalism and giving in to the idea that Brexit is indeed the only game in town. Anyone who has an understanding of the future needs to be articulating the potential gains in embracing a positive future. The only real way forward for the UK is to put itself at the front of that next phase of social economic change and to be the first and best at running a sustainable, supportive economy and society. We need to start cutting people's bills and cutting the use of energy. We need to stop the delaying action which has caused us to suffer the high cost of living rises. We need to make massive inroads into providing better schools, better housing, better public transport. We also need to champion investment in genuine regeneration projects that build and strengthen the stability of local communities because they are rooted in the local needs and are the product of the powerful local decisions, instead of being capitulated in the risible notion that a network of free ports will level up the back streets of Bradford. Levelling up has indeed been a great slogan for the Conservatives, but it needs to have a great reality as well. And that can only be achieved by putting forward a positive vision, not misplaced nostalgia and bitterness. And I agree very much so in this. I think this is what you are going to be seeing for the future. I think a lot of people indeed are going to double down on their assessments that Brexit was the right thing to do and that, quote, Brexit hasn't been done properly. You've seen many of the Brexiteers themselves even try to double down on this because they want more to push people to go for that low tax, low deregulation thing. That's what they're pushing people for. But that was what was caused many of these places to, well, be forgotten and left behind in such a tragic state that they are today. And Again, we do need to put forward some serious, better solutions, and investing in housing, public services, transport. It's a start, but it needs to go a lot further than this. And like I say, I'm looking forward to when this white paper on leveling up finally comes out. But needless to say, it ain't going to offer a whole lot of change that these communities so desperately need. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who support the channel that way. And we'll see you all